first light of morning crept across the pale marble walls of the royal palace. On this day, the air felt different. Banners fluttered in the gentle breeze. Servants moved more quickly than usual. Rumors spread through the halls. They spoke of a human warrior from a distant world. The story reached the ears of the alien princess standing by her bedroom window. She watched as guards prepared for the visitor. The alien princess leaned on the marble ledge and breathed slowly. She felt a mix of pride and doubt. Pride that her world was open to a human envoy. Doubt that this envoy might bring trouble. She had also heard stories of human mistakes. Her people valued balance and harmony. She wondered which side this warrior would choose. Below, the courtyard filled with guests. Nobles wore vibrant robes that caught the sun. Diplomats from nearby systems exchanged polite bows. Musicians played soft melodies on alien instruments. Artisans sold delicate gifts at stalls near the palace gates. All of it was meant to welcome the warrior. The princess felt her heart beat faster. She did not know what to expect. When the gates opened, the human warrior entered on foot. He wore simple armor that shone dully in the sun. His helmet lay at his side, and his dark hair fell around his strong face. He carried no heavy weapons at first. Instead, he held a small sword at his waist and a shield slung over one shoulder. His eyes were calm and steady. He moved without hurry, yet with confidence. The princess observed him from the balcony high above. She noted the way he nodded to the guards. She saw him bow slightly to the assembled nobles. He spoke quietly with the chief ambassador. His voice reached her ears like a gentle stream. There was no arrogance or show of force, yet every movement seemed precise and sure. She felt her curiosity grow stronger. Down below, the warrior approached the center of the courtyard. A circle of stones marked the area for the welcome challenge. It was an ancient ritual on Alara. Every guest of honor faced a test of skill. Warrior stepped forward and removed his cloak. He stood tall as the crowd fell silent. The princess leaned forward, her eyes fixed on his figure. The master of ceremonies spoke in the alien tongue. He invited the warrior to demonstrate his strength. Without hesitation, the human drew his sword. He held it with both hands and raised it high. Then he swung it in a single, smooth arc. The blade cut through the air and struck a wooden target. The wood split cleanly, and a cheer rose from the crowd. Next, the warrior lifted a heavy metal globe off the ground. It weighed as much as a grown alien feline. He carried it across the circle to a marked spot. Without pause, he dropped the globe, and it landed with a deep thud. A few guards winced at the sound. Even so, the princess felt relief. The warrior had passed the test with ease. After the trial, the warrior returned the sword to its scabbard. He nodded respectfully to the master of ceremonies. Then he looked up toward the balcony. His eyes met the princess's gaze. She felt a sudden warmth in her chest. She quickly turned away and pressed her palms to her cheeks. She reminded herself she must stay calm. She must act as a leader, not as a curious girl. That evening, the princess attended a small banquet in the private gardens. Lanterns hung from branches, casting soft light on silver tables. Glowing flowers drifted in the water of a shallow pool. The human warrior joined her at the head table. He bowed his head in greeting. The princess nodded in return. They spoke through a translator droid, which repeated their words perfectly. The warrior asked about the customs of her people. The princess explained the meaning of each flower and lantern. He listened intently and asked gentle questions. His tone was polite, and he seemed sincere. The princess found herself smiling more than she expected. As the night deepened, the banquet ended, and guests departed. The warrior lingered by the pool, watching the reflections of lantern light in the water. The princess approached quietly. She felt the soft rush of emotion in her chest. She wondered if he shared her sense of wonder at this place. He spoke first. "Your world is more beautiful than I imagined," he said softly. The princess nodded. She felt shy under his gaze. She answered, "It is home to many who hope for peace." He smiled and nodded. She realized then that she felt safe with him. She felt respect for the strength he showed and compassion for the gentle way he spoke. That night, Princess lay in her bed and thought of the human warrior. She remembered the sound of his sword cutting wood. She remembered his eyes meeting hers in the courtyard. She remembered his voice by the pool. She wondered what tomorrow would bring. She feared the unknown, but she also felt a spark of hope. The visitor from another world might offer her people a chance to learn and grow. As the palace slept, the princess drifted into dreams. In her dreams, she walked beside the warrior along a shore of shifting stars. They spoke of distant galaxies and shared stories of home. She awoke before dawn, her heart and mind alive with possibility. The future felt uncertain, but she knew. One thing for sure, the human warrior had changed everything. The morning sun painted the courtyard in soft gold as the princess prepared to leave the palace with the delegation. She stepped lightly across the cool marble floor, her silk robes brushing the ground. A line of royal guards bowed their heads. As she passed, the human warrior stood nearby, adjusting the cloak at his shoulders. She caught his eye for a moment and offered a small nod. The ambassador signaled the guards to open the gates. Beyond the tall arches, the hover coach awaited. The princess slid inside, the warrior following with quiet confidence. Inside, the hover coach. The air smelled of polished metal and fresh flowers placed by palace servants. The princess settled against the cushioned seat and watched as the palace walls receded into the distance. Beside her, the warrior placed a hand on the edge of the seat and spoke in a gentle tone through the translator unit. "This journey will take us across the river plains and into the borderlands," he said. She turned toward him, curious to learn more of his world's way of travel and his own experiences. As the coach hummed forward, the princess asked about his homeworld. He described Earth's wide oceans and tall forests. He spoke of simple villages, busy towns, and the way people worked together to plant seeds and harvest crops. She listened, picturing fields of golden grain under blue skies. In turn, she told him about Ilara's floating cities, where gardens draped over balconies, and crystal towers rose above the clouds. The warrior asked questions that showed he remembered every detail. She felt a quiet respect for his careful listening. After a time, the coach slowed and passed through a checkpoint of border scouts. The scouts wore sturdy armor and kept watch. From a low wall of stone, the princess felt the tension rise as they moved closer to the frontier. She sat forward, hands resting on her lap. The warrior noticed and offered a reassuring smile. "We guard these lands to keep peace," he said softly. She nodded, understanding the weight of that duty. They both knew that the peace treaty they carried was fragile. The sun dipped toward the horizon, and they stopped at a small outpost for the night. Tents of white canvas stood in neat rows, lit by soft lanterns. The princess and the warrior stepped into the camp, where scouts prepared a simple meal over open fires. She joined them at a low table of polished stone. The warrior took a seat beside her. They shared bowls of steaming broth and flatbread flavored with local herbs. The warmth of the fire and the scent of cooking eased her nerves. As they ate, their talk turned to duty and honor. The warrior spoke of his training, how he had learned to protect others even when the path was hard. The princess described her lessons in diplomacy and how she balanced compassion with strength. She told him of the ceremonies that marked each year in the palace, and he listened with gentle interest. With each word, they built a bridge between their worlds. She found comfort in his calm voice and his honest answers. When the meal ended, the warrior reached into his tunic and drew a small pendant on a fine chain. The light from the lantern caught its surface, revealing a symbol carved into the metal. The princess's breath caught. The symbol was the same as one she had traced on the walls of her childhood home. She had drawn it in dust as a child while dreaming of adventures beyond the palace. She stared at the pendant, her heart pounding. In her chest, the warrior looked up, noticing her sudden stillness. "This belonged to my mother," he said quietly. He held the pendant so she could see every detail. "She gave it to me before I left home," he added, his voice gentle. The princess's mind raced. Could this be more than chance? She remembered her mother's stories of an ancient pact between humans and Elrons. She had thought them legends. Now she saw proof in the warrior's hand. That night, the princess could not sleep. She slipped from her tent and walked to the edge of the camp. The sky was a swirl of deep purple and sparkling stars. The light of 2 moons cast a pale glow on the desert sands. She held the pendant in her palm, turning it carefully. She thought of the warrior asleep under his own canvas roof. She felt both wonder and uncertainty. What if their meeting was guided by fate? She approached the warrior's tent and found him awake, gazing at the night sky. He welcomed her with a gentle nod. She sat beside him on a rolled mat. Without words, they shared the pendant. She spoke at last, her voice low. "This symbol, ... I know it from my childhood." The warrior met her gaze. "Then perhaps our meeting was meant to be," he replied. In the hush of the desert night, they felt the weight of something greater than themselves. As dawn approached, the princess returned to her tent with the pendant pressed against her heart. She lay on her bedroll and let sleep come. Her dreams were filled with swirling images of past and future. 2 people standing in a crystal temple, joined by an ancient vow. She awoke with a start as the sun rose. The hover coach waited beyond the outpost. Beside her lay the pendant and a new sense of purpose. The journey ahead would reveal more of the bond they shared, and she felt both fear and hope for the days to come. The dawn light filtered through the leaves of the ancient forest as the princess and her small escort made their way toward the hidden temple. The air smelled of damp earth and moss. Birds called softly overhead. The warrior walked beside the princess, his armor tucked under a simple cloak, so he would not draw too much attention. Scouts moved ahead, clearing broken branches from the narrow path. The princess held her silk robe above the ground to keep it clean. She felt both excitement and unease. The temple was a place of old secrets, rarely visited by royal eyes. After a short walk, they reached a clearing. There, half buried in vines and roots, stood the temple's stone entrance. Tall columns carved with twisting vines and strange symbols framed a heavy doorway. The princess paused to touch one carving. Its surface was cool, and she could feel the faint pulse of magic in the grooves. She stepped back as the warrior placed a hand on the column, studied the symbols with keen interest. "This place was built before any records we have," he said quietly. The princess nodded, her heart quickening. Inside, the air was cooler and musty with age.
Ow.
Torches and metal sconces cast flickering light on walls lined with murals. Each mural showed scenes of people gathered in celebration, armies marching to war, and families huddled in prayer. The princess walked slowly, taking in every detail. She traced a mural of 2 figures standing beneath a glowing tree. The figures wore simple robes. Their heads were bowed to each other as if exchanging vows. The warrior moved closer to another mural. He reached out and let his fingertips brush the stone. The moment he touched it, a low hum filled the chamber. The princess turned toward him, alarmed. His eyes went wide, and he froze in place. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then the hum grew louder, and the warrior's face changed. His eyes unfocused, and he took a shaky breath. The princess ran forward. "What is it?" she asked. The warrior's hand slipped to his chest. He had a pendant there, the same one she saw at the outpost. He clutched it tightly. I don't know," he whispered. The hum faded, and the warrior blinked hard. He looked around as if waking from a deep sleep. The princess placed her hand on his arm. "You look hurt," she said. He shook his head. "I'm fine," he insisted, but his voice trembled. They moved deeper into the temple. The princess found a mural high on the wall, above the broken remains of a statue. She stepped onto a stone block to see it better. The image showed a woman and a man standing before a crowd, their hands joined. The man's face was worn by time, but she recognized the same strong jaw and the short hair of her warrior. Her breath caught. She slid from the block and stared. "At the warrior? That is you?" she said softly. The warrior peered up at the mural. "It can't be," he said, confusion in his voice. He shook his head. I have only been here one time. The princess pointed to the symbol above the couple's hands. It matched the pendant he wore. She felt her chest tighten.
Ah.
That symbol is on our ancient vows, she said. It means marriage. The warrior's eyes widened. He ran a hand through his hair. I don't remember, he said. The princess felt a wave of frustration and fear. She had believed their meeting was chance, but now she saw a plan older than her kingdom. How can you not remember? She asked, her voice rising. We met yesterday. The warrior reached for her hand and lowered his voice. I swear. I remember only the journey here, he said. But something happened when I touched that mural. He rubbed his fingers where he had felt the hum. I think I saw a memory. The princess backed away, tears welling in her eyes. She stared at the mural again, as if it would speak and reveal all truths. The faces around the couple in the image looked joyful and hopeful. She wondered how her people had kept this secret. So long, the warrior stepped forward. Please, he said, help me remember. She looked at him, anger and longing warring in her chest. Wanted to trust him, but her heart hurt with doubt. In the flicker of torchlight, the temple felt alive. The walls seemed to whisper old stories. The princess walked to a carved panel near the floor. The stone showed children playing under the same glowing tree. She pressed her palm against it and felt warmth. She closed her eyes and let herself imagine a life where she stood beside this warrior in a vow. In that moment, she felt his presence. Behind her, he placed a hand on her shoulder, gentle and steady. She did not pull away. When she opened her eyes, she met his gaze. He looked uncertain, but also filled with hope. If we were married, he said, then our bond is real. She studied his face, searching for truth. Her voice trembled as she spoke. We will find the record, she said. We will find the proof of our vows. The warrior nodded. I will stand by you, he promised. They turned toward the back of the chamber, where a heavy door lay, half open. Beyond it, a smaller room promised hidden scrolls or tablets. The princess felt a surge of purpose. The temple had offered them a glimpse of a forgotten past. Now, together, they would seek the answers. As they crossed the threshold, shadows danced on the walls, and both felt the weight of destiny guiding their steps. They left the hidden chamber with a single scroll wrapped in faded cloth. The princess held it carefully as they stepped back into the main hall. The torchlight flickered on the ancient carvings. The warrior scanned the walls for exits. There, guides to trusted scouts led the way through winding corridors. Each step echoed in the silence. The princess felt her pulse quicken. The scroll might prove their bond, but the temple had other secrets. She caught a flicker of movement behind, a ruined column. She paused and signaled the warrior to stop. Suddenly the air filled with shouts and the clash of metal. Hostile figures in rough armor poured into the chamber. They carried crude energy rifles and knives. Their leader barked orders in a harsh voice. Grab the princess, bring her alive. The princess's breath caught. The scouts drew their weapons, but they were outnumbered. The warrior stepped forward, placing himself between the princess and the attackers. He drew his sword and shield, his stance firm and calm. The first raider lunged at the warrior with a jagged blade. The warrior raised his shield just in time. The blade sparked against the metal. The warrior countered with a quick strike that disarmed the raider. Wood and metal clattered to the floor. The princess watched as he moved with surprising speed. Each motion was graceful and precise. Her heart pounded. Another attacker fired an energy rifle. The bolt hissed past the warrior's ear. He spun and slashed with his sword, cutting the weapon from the raider's hand. The attacker fell back, stunned. As the fight continued, the warrior's eyes glazed. For a moment, he froze, and a flash of memory passed through his mind. He saw himself standing beneath bright banners, a woman's hand in his. He heard her laugh. He felt the weight of a vow spoken long ago. The next instant, he shook his head and sprang into action. He deflected a knife strike aimed at the princess. His shield moved almost by instinct, saving her from a furious blow. She stumbled, but did not fall. She looked at him, her chest tight with emotion. The princess knew then that his skill was more than mere training. It was a bond forged by past promises. She felt a fierce protectiveness rise within her. She stepped toward the attackers, raising her voice. "Stand back!" she shouted. Her words echoed in the hall. A raider spun toward her, fury in his eyes. She grabbed a fallen torch and swung it low. The raider hesitated, startled by her courage. In that moment, the warrior knocked him aside and covered her flank. They moved together, back to back, confronting the Elstals, under the temple's high ceiling. The princess and the warrior fought. As one, she blocked a crude rifle shot with her cloak wrapped around her arm. He knocked the shooter off balance. She found strength she did not know she had. A raider charged her with a knife. She sidestepped and tripped him. The blade skidded across the stone floor. She glanced at the warrior. He offered a nod of respect. In that simple gesture, she felt their bond deepen. She realized she trusted him with her life. The last of the attackers fled into the dark corridors. The hall fell silent except for the princess's quick breathing and the warrior's steady stride. She held the scroll tight against her chest. He looked at her with concern. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "No," she said, "but my heart races." He smiled faintly, his armor dented and his cloak torn. "We will finish what we came here to do," he said. "Then we will return home." Together, they guided their retreat through the maze of corridors. The temple's magic seemed to watch them from silent walls. Each step felt charged with destiny. The princess recalled the scroll she carried. Inside were words of an ancient, pact, the vows that bound human and Alaran hearts. She still did not fully understand how time had hidden these vows, but she felt their power. She glanced at the warrior, whose eyes held both clarity and lingering confusion. She reached for his hand, and he took it without hesitation. At the temple entrance, the fresh air felt like a promise of renewal. The sky was painted with the warm light of late afternoon. The princess and the warrior paused on the stone steps. Scouts gathered around them, offering respectful bows. The princess lifted the scroll and held it aloft. "We will share this with our people," she said, her voice steady. "Our bond will guide the future." The warrior stood at her side. His sword sheathed, but his grip still firm on the hilt. He nodded and spoke with quiet strength. "We face what comes, together." As they mounted their hover coach, the princess settled the scroll in a protective case. The warrior took his place beside her. She felt the gentle hum of the engine and the stirring of hope in her chest. The path ahead was uncertain, and challenges still lay in wait. But she knew one thing for sure. The warrior was more than a visitor. He was her partner in life and in duty. And together, they would reclaim the promises of a forgotten past. The morning sun rose over the palace spires, painting the marble walls in soft gold. The princess walked through the silent corridors, her steps echoing on the polished floor. She held the scroll wrapped in faded cloth close to her chest, feeling its weight against her palm. The palace still seemed to sleep, though servants moved quietly along the walls. Each lantern glowed dimly before dawn's light fully spread. She paused at the door to the historian's wing, took a deep breath, and reminded herself of the warrior's calm strength. Then she pushed the heavy oak doors open and stepped inside. Inside the historian's chamber, shelves reached from floor to ceiling. Each shelf held leather-bound books, clay tablets, and polished stones with carved runes. The air smelled of old parchment. A single window let in pale light that fell on a long wooden desk. At the desk sat the royal historian, his quill poised over a sheet of clean parchment. He looked up, his eyes widening as the princess stood before him with the scroll. She held it out with steady hands. "I need you to read this," she said. Her voice was calm but firm. The historian's breath caught. He set aside his quill. The historian gently unwrapped the cloth and drew out the brittle scroll. He held it at arm's length, studying the faded ink. He opened the scroll on the desk and began to read aloud. His voice echoed in the quiet room. First came words of peace, an alliance between Alara and a distant human kingdom. Then the text shifted, naming an Alaran princess and a human warrior as partners in a sacred bond. The princess leaned forward, her breath catching as she heard the vow written in both Illyrian characters and human glyphs. Her hands trembled, and she pressed her palm to her chest. When he finished reading, the historian closed his eyes and sighed. He said the treaty had been hidden in the royal vaults for centuries. After the first meeting of the two worlds' envoys, feared that revealing the marriage vow would spark unrest among the council. So they locked the scroll away, trusting only the royal historian and his successors with its secret. The princess's pulse quickened. She had never learned of this alliance in her lessons at the academy. A chill ran through her as she realized how much her life had been shaped by choices made long before her birth. The princess asked why the human envoy did not remember the bond. The historian turned to another tablet and read a later note scribbled in shorthand, told of a ritual in which the warrior was placed into suspended animation to survive a cosmic storm. The storm's energy would either end or alter his life. So elders used magic to shield him. Time in the rift moved differently, so while only days passed in the temple, years passed in the world beyond. When they opened his chamber, no trace of memory remained. Only the scroll could awaken the truth. The princess recalled how the warrior's eyes had flickered when he touched the temple. Murals the revelation brought both anger and relief. She felt anger at her ancestors for hiding the truth and relief that the strange visions were not mere dreams. She placed the scroll on the desk and looked the historian in the eye. "We must honor this vow," she said softly. The historian nodded, bowing his head. He retrieved a small box containing a silver seal and read a final clause. The marriage vow must be reaffirmed before the council in the light of dawn, with witnesses from both worlds. Until that ceremony, their bond would remain valid but unseen. The princess touched the silver seal, its cool weight grounding her. She pictured the hall of council lords where centuries of debate had shaped her people's future. Imagined standing beside the warrior, offering the scroll and the seal as proof. She wondered how the council would react when they saw undeniable evidence of the ancient vow. She thought of her people, who would learn the truth and face a new path. She realized that no matter the risk, this bond must be restored. It was the only way to keep the peace and fulfill the promise made long ago. Gently, she closed the scroll and wrapped it once more. She thanked the historian in the ancient tongue, and he bowed low, his face solemn. She rose and brushed dust from her robes. Outside the chamber, the palace corridors stretched in silence. Tapestries hung on the walls telling stories of wars and treaties. Sunlight streamed in from high windows, glinting on polished floors and carved columns. She paused before a painted portrait of her parents under the twin moons. Their eyes seemed to look at her with pride. Then she moved on, determination renewed. Her steps quickened as she hurried toward the outer wing where the warriors' quarters lay. Guards and courtiers paused to stare, wondering at her determined pace. She did not pause to explain. Each turn of the hall brought her closer to him. She felt her heart pound with both fear and hope. She thought of his gentle voice in the private garden, of the strength he showed in battle. She whispered to herself over and over, "I must tell him now." At last, she reached the heavy door marked with simple symbols of home, and she placed her hand upon it. She rapped on the door. A moment the human warrior opened it, his brow furrowed in surprise. He saw her tense expression and stepped aside. The princess entered, holding the scroll case out before her like a gift and a burden. His quarters were simple but orderly. A desk held maps and sketches of stars, and a small telescope pointed toward the sky. A vase of fresh flowers sat on a side table. He took the scroll carefully, his fingers brushing hers. Inside he found the worn parchment. She placed her hand on his shoulder. "You are my husband," she said softly. His eyes widened as understanding bloomed, and together they would face the dawn's light, bound by a vow as old as memory. The princess stood at the edge of the council hall, her heart pounding in her chest. The great doors of the hall were made of polished silver and decorated with intricate carvings of past rulers. She glanced back at the warrior who stood beside his expression calm, but his eyes betraying the tension he felt. He had dressed in the formal armor of his people, a symbol of strength and respect. She wore a simple yet elegant gown, the soft fabric rippling as she moved. Her fingers rested lightly on the scroll they carried. The weight of their journey pressing on her shoulders, the council hall buzzed with voices. Behind the heavy doors, the lords and counselors were gathering. They were the leaders of Alara, each one powerful in their own right, and each with an opinion about the alliance with the humans. The princess knew this would not be an easy task. The bond they carried was ancient, and many in the council feared change. They feared what this alliance could mean for their future. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. The warrior reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder, offering silent support. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. The princess nodded. "I must be." Together, they entered the hall. The counselors fell silent as the heavy doors swung open. Their eyes turned to the pair of them, and the princess felt the weight of the room fall on her. The council was a mix of old and young, each with their own thoughts on the past, present, and future. Some wore elaborate robes, others simple tunics. The one thing they all shared was their power. But today, they would listen to her. At the head of the room sat the council leader, a tall, dignified woman whose silver hair shimmered in the light. She had seen many years and many leaders come and go. Her piercing eyes met the princess's, and for a brief moment the princess felt the weight of judgment in that gaze. But she stood tall, her heart strong. The princess stepped forward, and the warrior followed. They reached the center of the room, and the princess unfurled the scroll, holding it high for all to see. She spoke in a clear, strong voice that echoed off the high walls. "This scroll is a bond," she said. "A bond older than any treaty. A bond between Alara and the human kingdom. It is a vow made by my ancestors and sealed by a warrior who stands with me today." She gestured to the warrior beside her. "This human warrior is not just a guest. He is my husband, bound by a vow of peace and unity. And together, we seek to renew that vow before you." The room was silent. Some counselors looked confused, others angry. Whispers began to swirl among them, but the princess did not falter. She stood tall, holding the scroll with both hands. The council leader, an elder named Varana, rose from her seat. Her eyes searched the princess's face, and for a long moment she said nothing. Then her voice rang out, sharp and clear. "How can we trust this?" she asked. "How can we accept a bond made so long ago, hidden from us for so many years? The humans have always been unpredictable. How do we know this warrior will keep his word? How do we know you are not being misled?" The warrior stepped forward, his gaze steady and confident. "I stand by my vow," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I may not remember everything, but I remember her. I remember the bond we share. I swear on my life that this vow is true. I will protect this world, and I will protect the princess as I swore long ago." The council leader's eyes narrowed. "And what of the past? What of the times when humans and Elrons fought? What of the bloodshed and betrayal? How can we be certain this is not another trap?" The princess's voice rang out, cutting through the tension. "It is not a trap," she said firmly. "This bond was formed in peace, and it will remain in peace. Our ancestors made the first step. Now it is our turn to continue. We cannot live in fear of the past forever. We must move forward together." Room fell silent again. The council leader glanced around at the others, who seemed unsure of how to respond. Finally, she turned back to the princess. "You ask us to trust you," she said slowly. "To trust a bond that was hidden for so long. So you ask us to trust the humans who have always been outsiders in our world. Do you truly believe they can bring peace?" The princess nodded, her expression unwavering. "Yes," she said. "I believe in this alliance. I believe in this bond. And I believe that together, we can create a future where peace is possible for all of us." The council leader studied her for a moment before sitting back down. The whispers around the room grew louder, but the princess did not waver. She knew. This was the moment that would decide everything. The future of Alara, the future of their people, rested on this choice, one by one. The counselors stood and approached the princess. They placed their hands on the scroll, acknowledging its weight. Some did so reluctantly, others with clear hesitation. But each one left their mark. At the end, only the council leader remained. She stood and walked toward the princess, her eyes softening. She placed her hand on the scroll, and for a moment it seemed as if time stood still. Then she spoke, her voice quieter than before. "I accept this bond," she said. "It's not because of what was hidden, but because of what is before us. You and your warriors stand together, and that is what matters. May your vows lead us into a future of peace." The princess felt her heart swell with relief. The warrior stood beside her, his eyes filled with quiet pride. The council had accepted their bond. The future was now in their hands. As the council session ended and the room began to clear, the princess and the warrior exchanged a look. There was still much to do, still many challenges ahead. But for the first time, the princess felt a deep sense of peace. She had taken the first step toward a new future, and she was not alone. Together they would face whatever came next, hand in hand,